Welcome to Chalk and Code,
where the science of learning meets modern technology.
We're bringing together entrepreneurs, product leaders, researchers, and advocates
to spark ideas, challenge assumptions, and shape the future of learning. Welcome back to Chalk and Code, where we explore new and novel ideas in education, technology, and leadership. Today's guest is Raj Valli, co-founder and CEO of Thinkster. Thinkster is a remote learning tutoring program that focuses on developing math and analytical skills and that blends AI-driven personalization with human tutoring. That is a novel approach. Raj holds master's degrees in science and business administration from the Indian Institute of Technology, the University of Virginia, and the University of Maryland. He's a chartered financial analyst and a certified Six Sigma Black Belt. That is a great deal of work. He joins us today to share what he's learned about implementing and measuring effective educational technology, especially for remote learners, and how Thinkster helps students develop their math and analytical skills. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Theron, for having me.
So let's start by giving our audience an introduction to Raj Valli. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you were leading Thinkster.
Thank you. Long arc of how I got here. Like you mentioned, I'm a certified Six Sigma Black Belt. I've actually had professional experience working in 12 different industry verticals across 3 different continents, everything from aerospace, automotive, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, life sciences, industrial controls, software, blah, 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 right? But I also spent a significant amount of my time volunteering for a nonprofit organization that is actually focused on providing basic education for underprivileged children in India. And have learned a lot by being in the field, on the ground, working with students with lack of access to a proper classroom, to no textbooks, no blackboards, no teacher, all kinds of combinations. And I have 3 daughters myself. And I realized that there is a huge gap in the way instruction is being taught today compared to the expected outcomes that people are demanding. I'll simply say this. If airlines were to fly airplanes like the way we teach kids and get the graduation rates that we get, nobody will be flying airplanes because a good 40 to 50% of 4th graders and 8th graders fail. That's the jarring statistic that I would like to actually say, because that tells me that, or that told me that there was an enormous gap in the way people were approaching how to teach people, children specifically. And that's the arc of how we got started in terms of why I wanted to develop a very technocentric way of delivering education that guarantees outcomes.
Let's talk a little bit more about that for a moment. And I was looking you up, doing a little bit of research, and I ran across something that it was a presentation that you were making, and I was struck by the framing that you used, because sometimes, there's when we create edtech products, often we talk about and kind of geek out over the technology itself. And the thing from your presentation that struck me, and I'm gonna read the quote to make sure I've got it right. You were quoting Albert Einstein. "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious." And I found myself wondering, how does that kind of drive the rest of what you do, and how does that inform the work at Thinkster?
Um, when you're trying to solve a problem that has been around for 100 plus years, continues to be around even today for a large part of the ecosystem and the environment that we are operating in, if one were to be presumptuous in feeling that you have a solution that you're going to bring to bear, and then you're going to then force fit that solution to the marketplace, I would probably say that in some sense reeks of either overconfidence or an extremely poor understanding of the problem statement. So you have to be a student of the system and the problem that you're trying to solve, you obviously have opinions on what kind of frameworks and parameters and tools that you think you can use to, approach the problem that you're trying to solve. But at the end of the day, the vision between what we had when we started to where we are today hasn't changed. But the way we solution that has dramatically changed. It changes every day, to be honest. When I say it changes every day, we constantly discover better, newer ways of doing things because of evolution of technology, evolution of AI. There's things that are changing constantly that you believe that if you're using a rope to climb something and you find a ladder, you want to use a ladder. You don't want to be stuck to a rope. If you are you're riding a horse-drawn carriage, you find a car. You should use a car, not to continue to drive a horse-drawn carriage. Things like that, right? So I think that being permanently curious allows you in my mind, gives you the privilege of being constantly innovative from the perspective of the end user. So that's the basis.
Okay. Oh, so let's use that as a springboard to jump into Thinkster most especially. One of the questions that we often ask our guests is to position their product on a particular continuum. If you think of this continuum as having products that serve kind of the system of education in a country, and we'll just take the U.S. Like a student information system. It's a must-have in an organization that has a lot of students. And then that continuum, moving to the other side of it, there are products that really focus on the individual student. They don't necessarily have to be used within the organization itself. They could be used completely independently. Where does Thinkster fit along that continuum?
I think that we are a learner-centered, learner-centric solution. We obviously can dance with systems that are there, but we are more focused on amplifying the opportunity that learners have to accelerate knowledge acquisition. And it's a very broad term. And when we talk about a learner or a student, we are not necessarily K through 12 centric. We are talking about cradle to grave centric because everybody is constantly a student and a learner at any given point in time. You're constantly trying to figure things out. So our focus is extremely broad, but extremely specific in the sense that if you defined the vision and mission objective of the company as how do we make learners learn better, faster, sooner, quicker, then yeah, it's very specific. But the learner, by definition, is a broad swath of learners, all the way from a kindergartner to somebody who's 60 years old and trying to learn some new technology.
Okay. Is there a particular methodology that informs Thinkster that gives it an edge?
I don't know whether we hold any particular differentiation that others cannot tap into, but I would say that we hold a particular differentiation by understanding where things can work really well and how you need to accentuate those things that don't particularly work well with certain tools. For example, if you ask me to use my hands to play ball, you can say, well, you can use your foot to play ball as well, which is football. It's both of them are replaceable instruments for playing a game. But if you ask me the same question to use my hands to write something on a piece of paper, using my legs would not be probably the most efficient way of doing such things, right? So I think we have figured out what tools to use for what purpose to maximize that advantage. So the best way to define the differentiation of Thinkster is that there are five, I would say, PEX tools or five nodes that we particularly find expertise in. Not necessarily in and of itself an expertise on all these five nodes, but the way we we stitch together how we use these nodes of excellence is what gives us significant advantages over somebody else. So, for example, we use at a very broad base, we are a technology company, but we use a human in the loop to make sure that we can deliver outcomes that may not be possible if you just use either a human or just use technology. When we talk about technology, we are not just technologists for the sake of technology. We use artificial intelligence as one of the cornerstones of how we do things. But again, that's a tool that we know how to use. We have multiple AI patents. So we have expertise in that. We are not just some company that's using AI as a marketing gimmick. We truly fundamentally believe that we have to have certain differentiated advantages of how we use AI. But from a technology node, we also look at things like how we collect data. In other words, how is the student interacting with the product? But how is the student engaging with a piece of curriculum? So instructional design from a technology point of view is equally important for us. So you call it curriculum, you call it syllabus, but essentially they all wrap around how do you present information or content that needs to be learned in a manner that is objectively going to make a learner learn that piece of information the soonest, the fastest, the quickest, and with the most levels of efficiency. Those are all parameters that are important for us. So when you look at human centricity, human in the loop, and technology, and there is some continuum in between the two. So AI as a patent node. Then we talk about analytics, where we talk about explainable information. AI also being explained by the narratives of how the students is actually learning. Where are they struggling? What are they doing? Where are they falling behind? That level of incisive, real deep levels of insights and analytics governs our approach. And then obviously I talked about curriculum. How do you design curriculum and how do you present that curriculum using technology to optimize the learning outcomes? And then of all of those things, there is another pillar. So human in the loop, technology. Then the third pillar is behavior. When we talk about behavior, we talk about intrinsic motivation, intrinsic levels of engagement. Because what we believe is that you can have the most fantastic piece of technology, you can have the most fantastic human tutor, teacher, professor, whoever else it is, to teach a particular concept. If the student is disengaged, doesn't pay attention, doesn't matter who it is, then all bets are off. So we believe that we need to marry whatever we are offering within the constraints of, is this offered in a manner and a mechanism that's going to make the learner feel engaged? Because absent that engagement, nothing else matters. So we weave in these three core pillars, the two nodes of technology and curriculum and the human in the loop and all of those things. But the third integral node is everything related to, when I say behavior, it's a kind of a broad brush stroke. We also use technology there because when we talk about behavior, we are talking about, there was a big book that was written called Nudge. How do you nudge somebody to do things? How do you motivate them to do things? How do you make sure that they are actually seeing that level of engagement when they are interacting with us? And so for example, I believe I'm going to make something might sound blasphemous, but we believe that all students are capable of getting 100%, 100% of the time, 100% score, 100% of the time, with a unique difference being that if they are not disciplined, if they are not showing up, then, and if they don't have the right study habits, then they're not likely to see results. you may be the best, you may have the best intellectual capacity as a student, but if you have very poor discipline, if you have very poor processes that you're employing to learn something, it's likely that you're likely to fail. And all these things like growth mindset and everything else comes into this as well. So that is another. How do you study smart? How do I nudge you? How do I intrinsically motivate you? All of these components need to be tied to human in the loop, curriculum, technology, AI, and everything else. So it's a long continuum of things that need to come together because we guarantee outcomes. And we then look at these things as not a single metric that we need to influence. We need to influence the whole, and then the results appear magically.
Okay. To, let's take a couple of the topics that you brought up and go to the next level on them. You had mentioned the book Nudge and how to incentivize the learner. How is Thinkster set up to do that? And how do you evaluate where a particular learner is starting from?
Yeah, yeah. So two questions. How do we motivate? How do we know where to start? Right. Let's start with the latter, because learning where to start actually is it's a very beautiful problem statement, because people assume that you start at third grade in September because that's where schools start. At least in the East Coast, maybe they start in August in the West Coast. And everybody who's entering a classroom, there could be 5, 6, 7 classrooms for grade 3, each with 20, 30 kids. So you have like these 200, 250 kids that are showing up for third grade, and everybody is taught almost the same thing on day 1, day 2, day 3, week 1, week 2, week 3. The problem is that there is possibly that probabilistically that maybe 30, 40% of the students are not even aware of their second grade material in math. So out of the gate, you're going to basically start having kids fail because they don't have the fundamental foundational information that is needed for them to be successful. So we are starting students at a positional disadvantage to be successful because you don't know where to start. So I think a large part of what ails education system is actually that fundamental starting point problem, which is you don't know where to start. And the way we do it is we have an AI adaptive algorithm that quickly identifies how much does a student know at any given point in time. And look, I think the best designed diagnostic that a human being can design is to ask a student perhaps 1,000 questions that will take the student maybe 20 hours to finish.
Right.
No one is going to do that, right? So so how do we define what an ideal diagnostic is? An ideal diagnostic, in my view, is what I would call as a dipstick experiment in marketing language. You put a bunch of sticks and you figure out what's working, what's not working. So imagine that we are sending a probe, a dipstick, into a child's brain, and let's assume that the child's brain is compartmentalized into these wells of information, knowledge fragments that we call. Let's say there are, just for ease of reference, there are 100 wells of knowledge fragments that you need to identify that a third grader potentially needs to know. And then you say, well, I'm going to randomly, not randomly, but using AI, figure out what 10 or 12 wells of information I'm going to actually put my dipstick into to understand, are the wells shallow or deep, has information, has no information? And then you develop a hypothesis. So you have to keep in mind that even asking those 10 or 12 questions should be engaging for the student. It should not make the student feel like they are, pardon my language, dumb. That's not the
Right.
point. Or make them feel, oh my God, that was a really hard diagnostic. I think I failed. And you're going to ruin the student's confidence, which we absolutely don't want to do at any point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So we have these wells that we, using fantastic tech and AI and a whole bunch of things, we identify which, if you answer the first dipstick this way, I'm not going to ask you the next dipstick that I might ask another student. I'm going to ask you a different question at a different area. So I kind of have a very fine mechanism by which I'm going to ask the sequence of dipsticks that I'm going to be actually probing into your mind. And then I essentially create what we call as a probabilistic assessment of what I think you know.
Mhm.
In other words, I predict confidence probabilities of what I think you are likely to be good at because I just asked you 12 questions. It doesn't give me the right to basically assume that my test is deterministic. It's directionally probabilistic rather than objectively deterministic, right? So once I understand, let's assume that Tehran, you're a third grader, and I assume that Theron didn't answer this two-digit multiplication question that really well. I think that he has only a 60% chance that if I ask him another two-digit multiplication question, that he's likely to get right. In other words, what I'm saying is that if I ask you 10 two-digit multiplication questions, you're likely to get 6 of them right and 4 of them wrong. That's my basis, right? Based on 1 or 2 questions I asked you. I can then ask you another question in the same type, and then I can come to the decision that, I thought that Theron had a 60% probability of answering a multiplication question that involves two-digit numbers. But now, after asking the second or third question on the same topic, I can go and revise my probabilistic estimation of what your capacity is to either upshift to, I think he has a 90% chance of answering a two-digit multiplication question because he's kind of sort of answering more questions I'm having, or revise it down to say, well, I thought he was going to be 60% confident in answering these questions, but I think Theron needs some help.
Okay.
So I want to revise it down to 30% or 40% or whatever the number is, right? And this is something that happens dynamically every time I put a question in front of you, Theron. All the time, every time, dynamically altering the intelligence that we are gathering about you, but also computing our understanding of what you are capable of and what you're not capable of. And that's a dynamic situation. So it's a long-winded answer to your first question, which is where do you start?
Right.
Therein lies the secret sauce where we believe that, and keep in mind, Theron, that we have to make this process friendly so that we are not objectively upsetting that student and saying that, oh my God, these guys, I don't know what they were thinking. They're just like asking me all these hard questions. And now I feel like I don't know how to do math. Absolutely not, right? That's not the intent. So we need to make sure that we do this in a way that doesn't make you, the student, feel antagonistic towards math or the company, right? But then that we are really, truly, honestly, only genuinely wanting to know you better so I can make your life a lot better. But something critical happens here, Theron, right? This is where I was talking about emotion as much as intelligence, right? Because how I make you behave and believe matters for how outcomes are generated. If I am boosting your confidence as I am evaluating your interaction with curriculum that I'm putting in front of you, you being more confident translates to your capacity to answer more questions correctly than not. Has nothing to do with raw intelligence. It's just the way you feel. Okay? I'll give a simple example. Let's say you come back from school, you're a sixth grader, somebody just bullied you in school. You know how to do math homework really well, but then your mom came and told you that, well, Theron, just hit your homework and finish it. I bet you my bottom dollar that you're likely to make more mistakes because you're emotionally hurting, right? and not in the right frame of mind. So anyhow, those things matter. So there is a great deal of sophistication that we take into consideration, or the care that we take, not just AI, not just the way the curriculum needs to be provided, but also taking your emotion into consideration so we can continuously build your confidence. So that's the starting point. We can obviously go deep into this. I think your second question was something to do with motivation, nudging. How do we make the right behaviors? Correct?
And it was, and as you've talked, I found myself wanting to revise the question, um, so that it was not just about the motivation that you've described so well, but also how it all plays together to help the human tutor, presumably, increase the student's desire to learn, to give that student more confidence, to
Yeah.
reinforce the right behaviors, and to help tweak the wrong behaviors. Because I thought I heard you describe that the system is capturing information even as the student is interacting with the application. So presumably, at least from what I've read, it's also providing the tutor with information about the student's level of engagement and behaviors.
The human in the loop is a very integral and important component of whatever we do. Uh, but a human in the loop that's being just thrown a student in front of them and say, take care of Jack or Cindy or whoever else it is, and just go show up for a tutoring session, in my view, is pardon my English here, is a pathetic abuse of what a student or a teacher should be doing in that tutoring session. Because here we have an extremely intelligent, motivated tutor or teacher who wants to do really well. Teaching or tutoring is a fantastic profession. People derive joy out of that process. And so they are motivated to do the best for that student. And now it's our prerogative to arm that person with not just intelligence, but insight, which is a level higher: information, intelligence, insight, right? So the goal is, of course, lots of companies can gather information. We provide intelligence about how well a student has done in the last 5 days when they were doing problems in our system. We are deriving insights to the tutor saying that looks like Jack here has problems solving two-digit multiplication problems that have numbers ending in 9. Now, how insightful is that? So we provide that insight to that tutor. So when that tutor shows up for that tutoring session, even a half-hour session is extremely precise, because you have actually pinpointed an area of struggle for the student that's probably causing some heartburn and frustration for that student. And so the student now feels like, aha, I now know how to solve these problems. I feel excited. I feel confident. I no longer feel like I'm making these kinds of mistakes. So now the level of confidence increases. The teacher feels fantastic because now she has unearthed or bridged an area of gap that was so precise. And that's why we are able to guarantee learning outcomes, because, and it's a do loop process, because even what happens during the tutoring session is feeding our intelligence layer, and then we are able to deliver results.
How more than one of our guests has described, or emphasized, I should say, the importance of the human relationship between the tutor or the teacher and the learner. And when they talked about, while they look at AI and they've said, hey, it's phenomenal, phenomenal tool, we're still concerned about making sure that there's a human relationship between this. So
Yeah.
how does that get fostered? That sense of connection.
Just like you and I are having a conversation, I think it's a human conversation. Would be remotely not as interesting if I were to be talking to a tech version of a AI chatbot of Theron. It won't be asking me sentient questions that you may be very, artfully, asking me those questions, right? That's obviously the human connection is obviously indescribable. I do want to make one point, though, is that there is this whole, my view, confusion over artificial intelligence taking over the lives of human beings. And in my view, AI is not artificial intelligence. AI is also standing for actual intelligence. And artificial intelligence cannot function without the presence of actual intelligence. I'll give you a simple example. If you ask AI, what's the best way to get to uh, your home, from your home to the nearest airport, and let's say it gives you some direction, and you go check it with Google Maps. I'm not saying it will do this mistake, but I'm saying if it gives you, if you go to Google Maps or ask your neighbor what's the easiest way, and they give you a completely different set of directions, it's going to be like 30% less, more efficient, even 20 minutes less driving time, and probably make you spend less and avoid tolls and things like that. You're going to look at that AI response, the artificial intelligence response, and say, like, that sucks, right? But what gave you that opportunity to say that AI is not doing its job is because you're using your actual intelligence to evaluate the output of that artificial intelligence-based chatbot system or something else, right? So I don't think, I think AI today is doing far more things from uh, the speed with which it is able to assimilate information, synthesize information, and project some optionalities that would take a human being maybe 10 times more time or 100 times more time. But at the end of the day, you need to have a sentient human being to evaluate whether that output is actually intelligent or garbage. And so, until we reach a situation where AI is truly sentient, what they call as generative artificial intelligence, which is it is actually generating newer ways of doing things that a human being may or may not be capable of. Crystallized intelligence and fluid intelligence, which is the same as artificial intelligence or generative artificial intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is memorized intelligence, which is I asked Google what's the fastest way to go to the airport. It knows all the alleys and roads and everything else, and kind of does a computation based on traffic and time and distance and everything else, and gives you here is the optimal distance from home to airport. That's crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence is intelligence that has not yet been developed for solving a problem that you're fluidly solving at the moment of being asked that question. I don't think I have seen artificial intelligence systems that are actually fluidly intelligent. I'll tell you why. If fluid intelligence were to be present in an AI chatbot equivalent, it'll be able to tell you what stocks to pick, how to cure cancer, how to become a billionaire in the shortest period of time. It doesn't exist there, right there. There are norms of crystallized intelligence that it's telling you because it is able to process more information than your brain can process or can store and process. And because of that, you feel that AI systems are actually fluidly intelligent when they are essentially extremely good at hacking crystallized intelligence and giving you answers that make you feel like it's intelligent, but it's not. It's just a fantastic, very fast RAM-based encyclopedia retrieval memory generating system. That's it. Not creating new things. So I just want to, I have a very skeptical view when people just run off to the hills and say, oh my God, AI is taking over. No, you need to have fluid intelligence to actually really make remarkable things, and remarkable things are continuing to be made and done by human beings, which is why the human being in the loop, to answer your question, is extremely important, because you need to teach students to become fluidly intelligent, uh, essentially saying that if I tell you how to solve 3 plus 4, I think you should also develop the intelligence to say, if I give you a basket with 3 apples, 4 oranges, and 5 carrots, that you will have enough fluid intelligence to say, well, carrot is not a fruit. That means that I need to add 3 and 4, blah, blah, right? Again, it's a very, very simplistic view of fluid intelligence, but innovation, insight into newer ways of doing things are still, in my view, the purview of a human being. Machines are not even remotely close enough to that situation right now. That's my assessment, which is why a human in the loop is extremely important.
I have not heard it described quite like that before, the difference between fluid and crystallized intelligence. Um, But the concern that you have and the point that you're making about having the human in the loop, I have heard before, most especially in education, and where we're trying to kind of bridge the gap between using technology properly in education and actually getting all the benefits of accelerating learning or accelerating people's efficiency, so that we can maybe do more, or do differently, or more creatively, the things that we've been doing for decades. So, I would love to wrap up with the question that we ask everybody, because the we like to hear what people have on their minds, and the question is, what should we be talking about more in education and in technology that we're not talking about?
I think it's a great question. I think my view is that we need to be asking ourselves this question whether, in a knowledge-centric economy environment that we are in right now, are we providing the right opportunities to the right learners at the right time in the most consumable, easily consumable fashion that will accelerate learning outcomes? In other words, I think that education still seems to be more delivery focused.
Mm.
I make a bunch of students show up in a classroom. I'm going to deliver lectures to them, chalk and talk. If they learn, great. If they don't learn, tough luck for them, right? Is the attitude that I think is prevailing. And I think the fundamental question has to be reversed, which is the objective of having a lecture is not to deliver the lecture, is to figure out whether students have learned something about it. And can they do something with that learned knowledge? Adaptive knowledge is more important than consumed knowledge. The fact that I have memorized how an 8 times timetables works is useless unless used in the context of where do I use it so I can make life better for me or for those around me better. So, in other words, adaptive knowledge has to be the focus of all of education rather than delivery of knowledge. And there are probably at least 10 or 15 other things that we should be focusing on. But if I have to be reductive, because if everyone who learns something can adapt it and use it in a context, then I think that the world will be far better because you're going to have innovators and entrepreneurs and all kinds of crazy people, good crazy people that actually make things better, running around. And you are going to be marching towards utopia, in my view, if you're able to do that.
All right. Well, Raj, thank you very much for spending time with us. If our listeners wanted to get a hold of you or wanted to learn more about Thinkster, what would they do?
I'm very available. My first role is an educator. My second role is a CEO. So I am very available. I talk to a lot of people. People can email me directly at raj@hellothinkster.com. And, you can put this in your whatever description you need to have. But people can reach out to me. I'm available for conversations. I'm actually very intellectually curious about a lot of things. So people want to reach out to us about education topics, or whether they are building another education platform and they want to actually bounce up ideas, or they're an entrepreneur. Doesn't matter. I'm happy to talk.
Super. Thank you. And listeners, thank you for joining us here at Chalk and Code, where we look at the intersection of education, technology, and leadership. Today, we talked about the use of artificial intelligence and getting a human in the loop. We talked about the importance of creating among students not just a desire to learn, but the confidence that they can learn, and hopefully providing them with a great foundation for analytical skills.
Thanks for tuning in. If today's conversation sparked new insights or challenged your thinking, we'd love to hear from you.
Visit flexion.us for more information and join us here next time on Chalk and Code.